This is the first Tuesday of the month Waupaca City Council meeting.
Welcome everybody to our regular scheduled City Council meeting. Today is Wednesday, April 4th, 2018. I call this meeting to order, and let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll ask Sandy to read the clerk's open meeting statement for us.
This meeting and all other meetings of the Common Council are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the press in accordance with Wisconsin state statutes so that citizens may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
Thank you, and also take roll, please.
Brian Smith.
Here.
Steve Hackett.
Here.
Lori Chestnut.
Here.
Paul Hagen. Alan Keeland.
Here.
Scott Perchatsky.
Here.
Dave Peterson.
Here.
Paul Mayo.
Here.
Chuck Whitman.
Here.
Mary Fair. Here. And Eric Olson.
Here.
Nine present. We have a quorum.
The next up is the consent agenda. This is where we take all items on the consent agenda and vote with one motion on those, unless a council member or staff would like to see that any of those items moved to the regular agenda. If there are no changes to that, then I would entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Keelan, second by Chestnut, that we approve the consent agenda as printed. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Regular agenda, again, we have no additions to that regular agenda, so we'd be looking for a motion to approve the regular agenda.
Move to approve.
Motion by Fair, second by Hackett, that we approve the regular agenda as printed. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Under announcements and correspondence, we have a certificate for Jerry Allen, who is the administrative assistant at the police department. And I'll give this to Chief Hozell. This is to Jerry Allen in recognition of her service to the citizens of Waupaca for the last 5 years. Make sure she gets that from us. Thank you. Thank you. All right, next we have public input. This is set aside for anybody that would like to speak to us on a non-agenda item. If you would like to speak on a non-agenda item, please step up to the podium, give your name and address for the record, and limit your discussion to 3 minutes or less. Go ahead. Laurie?
I would like to say thank you to everybody who came out and voted in the city. We had a good turnout on a nasty day.
Yeah, no kidding. Thank you, Laurie. Okay, seeing no other, we'll go on to new business. We actually, this was brought up by Alderperson Alan Keeland to talk about street lighting, and I guess I'll just turn it over to Alan, and he can give you what his thoughts are on what's going on.
Thank you. You'll recall on December 5th at our council meeting, a woman named Jane Doolin expressed concern about the levels of lighting within the city. And subsequently, I've had several complaints from not only my constituents, but also fellow citizens about the light levels in certain parts of the city. And because of that, I wanted to address this issue and see if any of the rest of you have had complaints like that or comments about the levels of lighting within the city.
I have had one.
I've probably had 4 or 5 of them, but I've referred them over to Justin.
Al, I've
I've had a couple, but I've always given them to Justin.
right, so did
Said,
I.
give them help.
Same here, two. I've referred to Justin.
The lighting policy that the city has says in part that street lighting is provided to cast adequate lighting onto municipal streets and promote other areas deemed important to the city of Waupaca. And the policy is structured so that it's based on whether we have curb and gutter on both sides of the street, whether there's an intersection that must be lighted, and so on. So it's really not a prescriptive street lighting policy. Early in my career, over 40 years ago, I did street lighting for the city of Janesville as a result of the job that I had with Wisconsin Power and Light Company. And many municipalities throughout the country use a minimum light level for their street lighting program. So, for example, the city of Los Angeles uses a minimum light level of 3 lumens per square meter. And that's for residential area, and that's for low-level lighting areas. It goes higher for other parts of the city. What I would propose, what I would like to see is to have a survey done, probably by Public Works, I guess, the street department, to find out what the light levels are within the city, and basically map the city and see where additional lighting might be needed, or where lights can be taken out. We may be very well overlit in some parts of the city as well. So with these thoughts in mind, I guess I'd like to sound out the council members on how they feel about the issue.
I agree. I think that there are people who have expressed being fearful of walking at night. And we are a small enough city that safety, while people have to be careful, most places are quite safe to walk in the evening if there's adequate light. So, but I thought that some time ago, and I've not researched this, but within a year ago or two, we eliminated some lights in the city. And I think we could be all brought up to speed on if there was a survey done at that time or a mapping of the city and what the reason was for that.
Yeah, so it was nearly more than a year ago. We did survey the city, but not to the extent that Alderman Keelan is describing. We didn't go out there with a light meter. We just went and looked for all our street lights that we get billed. You know, here's a list of all of them from WPS. So that was the first part of the process, was taking an inventory. We found a number that we were getting billed for that existed, and then we found or identified several or quite a few of them that we thought weren't necessary. And the one thing that did seem pretty apparent, though, was our policy, the past policy, was fairly inadequate. All it called for was a street light at every intersection, or were deemed, I guess, impertinent by the board. It was one of these boards that isn't around anymore. So we did go out there and we surveyed that, and with the help of our mapping system, we were able to plot those, and I came back to council after some time and showed a map and made a recommendation, and that's how that went forward with the removals.
So what's the impetus to save some money on our light bill?
Absolutely, that was the big driver of it. We're saving roughly about $20,000 a year just for that energy usage. And we developed a new policy which tried to develop better or establish better parameters, not going to what Alderman Keelan's saying with this prescriptive lighting, because we looked at that and just thought that was a little too complex for a city of our size. So we just moved to about a standard spacing, which largely was adopted from City of Wausau's street lighting policy, is very similar to ours, coincidentally.
Justin, there was another factor though as well, because we had some comparable communities of our size, and it looked like we were we had way more fixtures than other communities. And again, that wasn't, it was just one of many.
Yeah, that was, in one of the council packets, I put that cost comparison in. I had received data from WPS themselves, where they gave us comparables. They couldn't tell us which cities. They just said, like, city 1, city 2, city 3. And we were the highest by far. I'd have to find that quick. But even after all of the removals that we did do or at the proposal, we were still the highest. So, and there was at least 5, 6 other cities ranging in population from about 5,000 to, I think it was 30 or 40,000, which obviously the bigger cities we kind of disregarded, but there was a couple that were similar in our size.
Just, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
With the removal, where those lights were taken out, were the new lights put in? Because on my corner, I mean, that has lit that corner up so much where, you know,
The LEDs.
yeah, the LEDs.
So we went through the removal process, you know, through the recommendation of council. And at the same time, I was trying to get LEDs installed in various spots that were the WPS lights. The Fulton Street corridor, those are our lights. We did that LED improvement, which you all should be aware of now. But I can request 12 a year from WPS to get upgraded. So I just went around and tried to pick spots where I thought they would be the most useful.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that corner was one that was picked.
Yep, so that was one I remember I requested. When they have to replace them, when ones go out, when they replace new lights, they're LEDs automatically.
Okay.
So.
I know that 2 of the calls I received were because of the crime, the high crime, and then we're taking the lights out. Brian, do you have anything to say about that? That we have a crime rate that's so high, why would we be doing that?
No, actually, Justin and I, when this project came up, we went around to the different neighborhoods in the city here, and we looked at the street lighting as to where we've had problems, and there wasn't anything that we saw that was correlated with that. And with the talk of the LEDs as to where they were, that those would light up the areas. I have not specifically run a crime report to see if anything has been caused by lighting. However, I can tell you our thefts that we have or burglaries have not changed. There's been no spike in crime because the streetlights have been taken down.
Let's get back to the question that was actually asked, though, and what Alan was basically asking is that, does council have any interest in going throughout the city and finding out if there are some areas that have low illumination, and would we have some interest in just finding out where those are, and then if they are there, are we willing to change the ordinance and put up lights in those areas? And I guess that's the big question that if I understand your question,
Yes.
Alan, is does council have an interest in moving forward with that? I did meet with Alan and Justin yesterday just to get a better idea of what Alan was interested in. And I made a recommendation that we maybe do as a trial, if you are in favor of this, just pick one of the wards. Of course, Alan picked his, which would be smart. So pick one of the wards and just have public works staff go through there. I guess the piece of equipment that they need is fairly inexpensive, right? I heard a price of like $150 or something
For
like
light
that.
meter, right?
Yeah. So it would be, the equipment's fairly inexpensive. It would be the labor, obviously, and some of our employees would have to come in outside of their regular schedule to do that.
Well, yeah, if we move to this, I guess even to do a study, it's going to be fairly extensive labor-wise, and it's going to take us quite a bit of time put this together, certainly an entire ward, and come back and, you know, what we were going to find out, who knows? I mean, it's, if we do try to establish this sort of standard, we could be costing us more than we're saving right now. So I'd just like to say that, you know, we tried to find a good middle ground here with this, the policy that it is now, without going to the prescriptive standard and going by a spacing, and constantly looking to make improvements. And I guess that's just how I've been trying to manage it up to this point.
Mayor,
Yeah, Paul.
I understand where Alan's coming from on this, but if it's going to be really expensive, as Justin says, I'm thinking since the lights have gone out, I think we've heard from a number of our constituents already in their neighborhoods, and they've identified, at least in my ward, they've identified a couple of spots where they'd like to see the light put back up. And I think probably everybody on council has experienced the same kind of comments. Given the expense Justin's describing, I'm hesitant to instruct him to do that. On the other hand, if it's just one ward, maybe that would be enlightening.
Well.
Okay.
Justin, just one ward, would that be fairly, as opposed to the city?
Yeah, I'd like to carve, if we want to do this on a trial basis to try and shed some light on the subject, I'd be willing to do that.
Okay,
I'm sorry I brought this subject up.
Dave, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was in favor of taking them out for the saving of the money, with the idea that if a constituent had a problem, they could go to Justin, or that's Public Works in general, and he would check it out, and if needed, put the light back in, or put an LED in, or whatever is necessary. And one of my biggest complainers really lives very close with me.
Like in the same house?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Justin was up there, and he said it's on the list. I'll put you on the list for sure, take care of the two areas. And I think she's still on the list. That's the thing, is, and I understand with the Public Works challenge, it's gonna be lots to do that way, but if they could do that and take care of these wishes and check them out and see if there's legitimate, why not? Stay with that.
Scott?
I think a lot of this was precipitated by my calls that I got, or people that asked me over the light you took out, and then all of a sudden they thought things were a lot darker. So I guess maybe go back with your list instead of going through this major survey and costing us, tens of thousands. Maybe we can put some back and not some back. Like Paul's, one of the complaints was State Street, north.
North.
A little dark, big time corridor, sidewalks on both sides. That's another thing. It's a kind of a main. It's a highly walk pedestrian area, and I think some of them are, some of them aren't. And I think that's where we're getting more complaints. Some of the lights were taken out of some sidewalk areas that were really used more than others. So,
Chuck, you had.
Yeah, I was gonna bring the same thing up. I thought you had mentioned when they were taking the lights out, if somebody had a problem with a place that was too dark, you would look into it and maybe replace that one, or
Actually,
move it
yes.
someplace. I thought that was part of the thing when you first came out with this place.
We have looked at quite a few, and we have a form that we fill out in the while we're doing it, and to help us determine if it should go up or not. And for the most part, we've said no to majority of them. A couple lights have gone back up, because we've done the measurements, considered a number of factors, and we've put two back up. Some of what Alderman Peterson was mentioning about, have those things been completed or not, when we want these lights to go back up or move or get brighter, we have to make a request to WPS, so I'm almost at the mercy of when they put their work order in and when those things get done. So the Center Street
Center Street
improvements have been requested actually way back in February, and I think I got a hold of him again today. Well, I know I got a hold of one guy who's gonna send it up the chain again, so. Sometimes there's quite a bit of a delay because they're not our lights, but we have to make the request. But we have done the reviews and gone through the process. And ultimately, I let the people know that if they don't like the answer, they can always come here. So that message has been relayed.
Okay, so again, the question was, is that, does the council have any interest in doing some kind of mapping with the idea of finding out where there are some darker areas? And again, it really does, it has something maybe to do with the lights that we took out, but it really has to, it could be places that we never had lights before that were dark.
Exactly.
You know, so we're not just, I think Alan's not just looking for that. So if you have some interest in that, and you're okay with the idea of just picking an area, whether it's a ward or whether it's something that, an area that Justin decides to pick, and then we can figure out what the cost will be to do that, and then move forward with that. If you have no interest whatsoever, then we'll just stop for the time being. I mean, I think that's what you're looking for, right? I mean, if,
Yeah, I'd like to see, a consensus, majority to proceed on something like this. And it doesn't have to be the Fifth Ward, I'm being facetious there, but I think a ward study might be an appropriate way to do it.
I agree. But let's get a number first before we give the go-ahead,
Okay.
as far as cost.
is that something you can do, Justin, is get us?
Yeah, I mean, to try and get a light meter, it certainly would be fairly simple to get a cost on that, but after that, it's just gonna be labor time.
Yeah.
So do you want
An estimate on
equivalent
how much
cost
they'll-
for labor?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
If you can bring that back to is next meeting soon enough? Or is that,
Yes, sir.
can you get it done?
I'll try.
What do you want? Longer than that?
I'll work on it. Hopefully I can get this back before the end of May.
Okay, so the first meeting in May, we'll discuss it again?
Hopefully. Yes, I will
The
shoot for
first meeting in May, we'll talk about
that.
it?
Sure, yes,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you.
Justin, I'd like to get an idea of what you would do. I mean, as far as, you got a light meter, you're just gonna ask somebody to walk around, or, you have to have Alan
Yeah.
might know what you do, I don't know.
That's exactly what you do. You drive or walk around to the areas. The brightly lighted ones, you don't have to measure particularly, unless you want to de-lamp something there. But, yeah, you walk around and get the light levels, and where it's less than, say, 3 lumens per square meter, that you have identified then as an area that might need lamping.
So, we don't need a vote or a motion on this, but can I see a show of hands of how many people are interested in doing this idea of just picking a ward and finding out approximate cost, and then Justin will bring that back, and then we can vote at it at the next meeting? How many people are in favor of doing that? That's a majority, so if you can, Justin. If it doesn't work out that you can do it by that meeting, at least let us know when you can do it.
Okay.
Bye. All right, anything else, Ellen, you
No,
want to add to
thank
that?
you. Thank you all.
Okay, let's move on to license report number 1402. These are our bartender's license. We just need to approve these for the record. Need a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second?
Motion by Keelan, second by Chestnut, that we approve license report number 1402. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Next up is our closed session. I ask that we have a motion to go into closed session.
So move.
Motion by Chestnut, second by Olson, that we convene into closed session in accordance with section 19.85, parent 1, parent G of Wisconsin State Statutes, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or likely to become involved. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Mary Fair,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Chuck Whitman,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
and Steve Hackett.
Aye.
9 ayes, motion carried.
Were the cameras on and are they off now? Do we know?